What if the person you've become is exactly who you once feared? You don't notice it at first. It starts small, how you respond when you're tired, how your voice tightens when someone doesn't listen, how you shut down when you feel unseen. And then one day, you hear yourself say something, and it's like an echo from the past, from someone who once made you feel small, someone you promised you'd never become. It stings, quietly, because you've worked so hard to grow, to heal, to never repeat the pain that raised you. But here you are, becoming the very shape you swore to avoid. You feel it in your silence, in your guilt, in the shame that doesn't scream but hums in the background of everything. There's no applause for this kind of growth. No one claps for the battle you're losing inside. Because outside, you're functional. You smile, you work, you love. But inside, something sacred is slipping through your fingers. It's not that you failed. It's that you've bent so far to never become them, that you never became you. And now, the weight of your own reflection feels heavier than any past you tried to escape. But maybe, just maybe, this isn't the end of your becoming. Maybe it's the beginning of your reckoning. Because to truly heal, you have to face the parts of you that hurt others, the parts you buried, the parts you inherited. You're not broken. You're just meeting yourself in the raw, real, uncomfortable mirror of life. And sometimes the soul doesn't awaken through peace. It awakens through collapse. So what if everything that aches right now isn't a mistake? What if this quiet pain is your soul whispering, now you're ready to remember who you are? You didn't wake up one day and decide to betray yourself. It happened in whispers, in choices too small to notice, in rooms where you laughed when you wanted to cry, nodded when you wanted to scream, agreed just to be loved. You built a self out of survival, polished, pleasant, predictable, but not true. They called it maturity. You called it progress. But in truth, it was a mask, crafted carefully over the years, designed not to protect your soul, but to keep it hidden. You see, no one teaches us how to be real. They teach us how to be acceptable, how to fit, how to shrink just enough to stay. So you did what so many do. You shaped yourself into what the world would reward. You smiled when it hurt. You gave when you were empty. You forgave what still bled. And somewhere in that performance, something precious was lost. Your fire, your no, your strange, wild, sacred self. You thought you were being good. You thought you were breaking the cycle. You thought, if I'm kind enough, soft enough, perfect enough, maybe I won't become like them. But perfection is just another prison, and kindness without boundaries becomes self-erasure. So now, here you are, exhausted, aching, distant from the person you thought you were becoming. Because the more you tried to be the opposite, the more you abandoned yourself. You said you'd never yell like your father, but now your silence slices deeper than any scream. You said you'd never manipulate like your mother, but now you disappear so others won't leave you. You became a ghost in your own life, not out of malice, but out of fear. And that fear built walls, not around others, but around your own soul. This is the invisible prison no one talks about, the quiet cell of self-denial, where the bars are made of old promises, and the key is buried under years of pretending. You thought you were free because you didn't repeat their words, but the energy, the wound, remained. Because healing isn't about changing the script. It's about rewriting the entire story. And that means facing what you swore you'd never resemble. It means feeling what they couldn't, speaking what they silenced, becoming what they feared, your truth. You see, the person you vowed never to be was just a mirror, not of your fate, but of your choice. You can look at that reflection now, not with disgust, but with curiosity. You can ask, what part of me needed to wear that mask? And more importantly, am I ready to take it off? This is the threshold, not of who you might become, but of who you've always been underneath. No more performance, no more shrinking, just the sacred rebellion of being real. Be honest, who is the person you swore you'd never become, but sometimes see in yourself today? Write it like no one's judging. This might be the first time someone truly understands. No one prepares you for how quietly pain can rewrite your identity. It doesn't always come crashing in like a storm. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper that grows louder with time, a tension in your chest, a silence after a conversation, a moment where you flinch, not from what someone else said, but from what you just did. We all carry pain, but some of us carry it so long, we forget where we end and the wound begins. You weren't born with this hardness, this distance, this fear of being known. You were born soft, curious, willing to trust. But over time, reality introduced you to its sharp edges. You were taught, through neglect, betrayal, or absence, that being open meant being hurt, that being vulnerable meant being weak, that needing love meant risking abandonment. So like any soul trying to survive, you adapted. You put on strength like a coat, wore indifference like armor. You stopped asking for what you needed and started performing what others expected. And without noticing, your pain became your posture. You didn't become bitter because you wanted to. You became bitter because bitterness was safer than breaking. You didn't become guarded because you stopped loving. You became guarded because loving started to feel like bleeding. And here's the most human part. The person you swore you'd never become. They were shaped by this same kind of ache. Maybe they yelled because no one ever listened to them. Maybe they controlled because they never felt safe. Maybe they abandoned because no one ever stayed for them. When pain is not seen, it doesn't disappear. It transforms into habits, into fears, into coldness, masked as strength. You're not the first to inherit this, and you won't be the last, unless you choose to interrupt it. This is why facing yourself hurts. Not because you're failing, but because you're feeling. You're starting to sense what was numbed. You're beginning to hold what was hidden. And yes, it's heavy, but it's also sacred. Because this isn't just the pain that broke you. It's the pain that's been trying to wake you up. Wake you up to the parts of you that need care. Wake you up to the emotions that were pushed aside. Wake you up to the child within who still wonders, was it my fault? No, it wasn't. But it is your responsibility now. To stop abandoning yourself the way others once did. To stop running from the mirror just because the reflection stings. You are not your past, but your past lives in you. And until you turn toward it with gentleness, it will keep living through you. So when you hear that familiar voice come out of your mouth, pause. Not to punish yourself, but to understand. What's beneath it? What's the wound you were never allowed to name? What's the story your pain has been dying to tell? Because when you finally listen, not to justify but to witness, that's when transformation begins. That's when healing stops being an idea and becomes a living truth. And you realize you're not becoming the person you feared. You're becoming the person who's finally ready to feel what they couldn't. And in that feeling, you return to yourself. Let's talk about letting go. Not in the way you've been taught, where detachment means becoming numb, distant, or uncaring. No, real detachment is sacred. It's not about walking away from love. It's about walking away from illusion. Because what if the person you've been trying so hard not to become has been holding you hostage all along? What if the more you resist them, the more they control you? This is the paradox. The harder you try to outrun your shadow, the more it lives in your footsteps. You think, I'll never be cold like them. So you overcompensate. You become overly accommodating, endlessly forgiving, constantly pleasing. You think, I'll never be manipulative like them. So you let others walk over you. You stay silent when you want to scream. You pretend you're okay, because controlling others scares you more than losing yourself. And in that effort to be nothing like them, you lose the parts of you that were never like them to begin with. That's the danger of building an identity on rejection. You become the inverse of your fear, not the embodiment of your truth. So, what would it look like to release that resistance? To stop measuring your worth by how different you are from who hurt you? What if your healing isn't about opposing them, but about returning to you? That's what detachment really is. Not escaping, not forgetting, but stepping out of the echo. It's when you stop defining yourself in contrast to pain and start discovering who you are in the absence of it. Because when you detach from the performance, when you drop the script you've been rehearsing your whole life, you start to feel something new. Relief. Not the relief of approval, not the relief of finally getting it right, but the relief of no longer pretending. You stop asking, how do I not become them? And start asking, who am I? When I'm not trying to be anyone else. That question doesn't always come with answers, but it comes with peace. The kind of peace that hums beneath the noise. The kind of peace that doesn't need applause to feel real. It's quiet, but it's honest. That's the birth of authenticity. Not polished, not perfect, but raw, open, soft in the places you once armored. You don't need to be harsh to be strong. You don't need to be silent to stay safe. You don't need to erase yourself just to avoid becoming someone else. True detachment is gentle. It says, I can see the pain in you, and still choose not to carry it forward. It says, I can honor where I come from, without letting it dictate where I go. It says, I am allowed to be complex. I am allowed to change. I am allowed to be nothing like the past, and still not run from it. This is freedom. Not the kind that screams, I'm healed, but the kind that whispers, I'm here, still breathing, still choosing. So let go, not of your past, but of your need to define yourself against it. Let go of the version of you that was built only to survive. Let go of the rules that kept you hidden. Let go of the fear that love means becoming someone else. And in that release, feel the weight lift. Feel the air return. Feel the space within you make room for the self that's always been waiting. The self that doesn't need to be opposite of anything, to finally be real. There comes a moment, quiet, unannounced, when fighting no longer feels noble, when all the masks, defenses, and identities you've built begin to feel too heavy, when running from your reflection becomes more exhausting than facing it. This is the beginning of surrender, not the kind that means giving up, but the kind that means coming home. Because what if you never needed to fight your way into wholeness? What if healing wasn't something to be achieved, but something to be remembered? Underneath every version of you is you. Not the you who's perfect, not the one who always chooses right, but the one who is present, the one who can sit in silence with all the parts of yourself, without judgment, the angry one, the hurt one, the one who lashes out, then cries, the one who loves deeply, then pushes people away, the one who tried to be everything for everyone, and forgot how to be anything at all for themselves. All of them are you, and none of them need to be erased. They need to be seen, because truth doesn't destroy you, it dissolves what you're not. And when you stop resisting what's true, you stop suffering. That's the wisdom of the Buddhist path. Not to escape suffering, but to understand it, to sit beside it like an old teacher and let it speak. And suffering often says, you are not your pain, you are the one who holds it. You are not your past, you are the one who survived it. So breathe. Breathe into the mess, into the confusion, into the grief of becoming someone you swore you never would. And know this, every collapse is a doorway, every unraveling, a return. You don't need to climb out at this moment. You need to sink into it. Let it teach you what pretending never could. Let it soften you in the places life made hard. Let it show you that you are not the reflection of your worst day or your lowest thought, or the person who once failed to love. You are the space that holds all of that. And in that space, you are free. You are free to stop fixing, free to stop performing, free to stop trying to be the opposite of someone else. You are free to just be, here, now, breathing, alive, whole, not because you're healed, but because you are honest. And maybe that's all you ever needed. Not a new identity, not a redemption arc, just the courage to sit in the silence and listen. Because in that silence, something ancient begins to stir. Not a voice, not an answer, but a knowing. The kind that doesn't need to be explained, because it's always been there. And maybe that knowing whispers, you're not who you feared. You're who you were meant to find when you finally stopped running.